Hello bookworms, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and I hope you're having a lovely day whatever it is you're doing. So it's the end of the month, which means one thing: we are doing my monthly wrap up. So with further ado, let's get straight into the video and see what books I did read in March. So I read 16 books in March, but before I get into those 16 books, I do just want to talk about three things. The first thing is whether I completed the readathons that I was planning to do. The second thing is about a DNF. And the third thing is about books that I didn't get around to reading, or if I'm carrying them through to April. So first thing, we're going to do just the negative part first, which is my DNF. So I did a DNF, you would have seen that video, you would have seen my thoughts. I'm not going to fully go into it, I will tag that video down below if you haven't seen it. But for my 12 books challenge, I was recommended a book in March to read, The Drowning of Arthur Braxton by Caroline Smales, I think. This was recommended to me by Becca, who's one of my book club members. This is a beloved book by her, so I was really apprehensive going into it because I thought, what happens if I don't like it? Now, I read quite a big chunk of this book. When I put the DNF in Storygraph, it said that I had read 82% of the book, so as you can see, I did read a chunk. I literally got to page 319, 320, and that's when something happened that I was like, no, I can't. This is too triggering from me. I can't read on. Like, it literally, when I talked to Becca about this part, it was literally just that little section and it was done, dusted, nothing more. But for me, it was no. Like, if it was slightly mentioned, I could have probably dealt with it, because it's the fact that it went graphically detailed about what happened. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Basically, this is a very, very weird book. I can't even explain to you what really it's about. All I can say is there is this sort of like swimming pool, bath pool place, which is called the Oracle, and loads of people go to because there's water healers there, supposedly. There's an Oracle who could sort of tell you your future and like all of that, and loads of people like going there, and then all of a sudden it stopped. It got closed down, and they're making like some new sort of spa place thing on top of it, but planning permission keeps getting declined, so like nothing's actually happened. So we first in the book we get a complete character that's not even part of the book. Like, you know, this book is supposedly about Arthur, and I was just like, well, where's Arthur? You know, a good third of this book was about a different character, and that basically it was just opening up the scene about these baths, about the Oracle, about these water healers, and the end of this specific section was this girl was getting sexually harassed by this man who could technically be her father, and because of how old she is, it's classed as rape, because she was, what, I think 13 or 14, but she actually chose to have sex with him and have a relationship with him, but it is still classed as sexual assault, it's still classed as rape because of her age, and quite frankly I think she decided to do it purely because then it, you know, it wouldn't be forced on her, which I think it would have happened. So we have that, and I was just like, oh good grief. So I actually ended up looking at the trigger warnings on Storygraph because there was none in the book, and I was just like, I need to know what I'm getting myself into. So I looked at all of the trigger warnings, and you know, I was just like, okay, right, I know what I'm getting into now. So we had that, and we finally met Arthur, and basically Arthur is getting drastically bullied, and there's this scene where basically something happened. He runs away and he ends up going to the baths, but he sees the baths, you know, filled and like, you know, not, he sees them what they used to be like, and he meets three people there. There's a girl swimming in there in the swimming pool, we've got like another girl who's doing the singing, and then we've got a girl who hangs around the swimming pool, and then we've got this really weird man and some other people. And I'm not 100% sure whether these people are ghosts or what. Some of them I know they are. For example, the character that was at the beginning, she was a ghost because actually she ended up committing suicide. Long story cut short, Arthur meets this girl in the swimming pool, and he falls in love with her, she falls in love with him, but for whatever reasons this happens. I don't know what happened. I know it's a movie, and the little trailers I've seen in the movie, I can work out what happened in the end, because it does say drowning of Arthur Braxton, so. But the bit that I had a DNF was we meet the character who is the other female in the water who's doing like the singing, and basically she's been dragging young boys in, and then she's drowning them and they die to help the other girl who was in the water. But she explains how she got into this situation, which basically was she fell in love with a bloke. They wanted to have a baby, it didn't work. She finally got pregnant, like out of the blue as a surprise. You know, everything in their relationship was working well, but then she noticed that her husband kept coming in late and like having arguments. Long story cut short, she fell pregnant, she had a baby girl, she finds out her husband is having an affair and has had an affair for a long time, like he's bought this house for this woman and blah blah blah. And instead of doing the sensible thing of taking her baby and leaving, she wanted to hurt him just as much as he hurt her, and to do so was to use their baby daughter because he was infatuated with her. And so what does she do? She kills her baby daughter. And I mean, we get a graphic scene of her overdosing her with medicines. In hindsight, this medicine makes the baby not fully with it and probably fully feel everything, but she gives them like the baby that, and then she drowns her in the bath. And I mean, it was graphic, and I apologise if what I'm saying triggers you too, but I am a mother. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I nearly lost my daughter when she was a baby, so I do have triggers in that sense that, you know, I could have potentially been a mum without a child. And I read that and I burst into tears. I was sat with my mum. My mum was like, "What is wrong with you?" Because I mean, I burst into tears. It was uncontrollable tears. I threw my book and I explained to my mum, and she goes, "Okay." And she was like, "Do not read anymore, Amy. Like, you know, look at you." And so, you know, I did vlog, and it was a DNF, and I literally unhauled his book. It's gone. I actually have written in the front of the book trigger warnings, and specifically the bit about the child, because I thought there was nothing on the trigger warnings and storygraph to say a infant murder. Like, it was a child death. I'm sorry, it wasn't a child death. It wasn't an accident or anything like that. It was a physical murder. Anyway, that was a DNF. I did explain to Becca saying I'm sorry, and she said, "Oh yeah, I don't expect it to be for most people." No disrespect to Becca, but I do not particularly understand why it is a favourite book, because it talks about such horrendous things. I don't get how you can get an enjoyment out of it, because the bits I read before I DNF'd, I was still like uncomfortable and disturbed by it. But no more. Like, I spent 8 minutes talking about this book. We're not talking about it anymore. End of. If you want to read it, carry on. I recommend you really go into depth of what triggers you, because yeah. So the second thing, I want to talk about the books that I haven't read or whatever. So first things first, I'm currently reading Slow Horses by Mick Herron. This is for a read along and a watch along with Tandem Collective. I am currently on chapter H, page 121. So a lot of us didn't receive our books until last Monday. This Monday, sorry, not last Monday, this Monday. I think someone received their book quite early, so they've finished it now. But a lot of us are literally reading it this week because we've only recently got it. But I think tomorrow we are starting to watch the actual TV series of it. So I am reading this now, but obviously I don't know whether to. I'm not going to count it as March, as I think I'm going to count it as April, because I will finish this the beginning of April. So I think I'm just going to put this over to April's TBR. But I'm currently reading it and I'm really enjoying it. From what I'm reading so far, it's a 4-star vibe, but obviously I've got quite a lot going into it, so it might still be 4-star, it might turn up to be 5 stars, but you'll find out my full thoughts next month. But I am currently reading this. So The Hobbit was on my TBR by J.R.R. Tolkien, or Tolkien, I'm not sure which way you say it. This was like a big Bookstagram buddy read. I was going to read it, but if I'm going to be totally honest, by the time I got round to picking it up, I had already missed the first week's chapters, and I was just like, do you know what, I can't be bothered. Like, I would like to read this, but like from the little bit that I have read, I'm like, is it one for me? I don't think so. So it might be a book that I would just unhaul, because I think if I did the buddy read and stuck with it, then like, yes, I probably would have read it, but because the buddy read I was like way behind and I had so many books to read, I was just like, I can't be bothered. And yeah, so I think it's going to be an unhaul book, because I don't think I'm actually going to physically get around to doing it. I was hoping to read Blood Cyan by Deborah Follet or whatever. I did start reading it. I can't remember where I was. I don't know where I got. I think I read like the first like 3 or 4 chapters, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, it was quick paced to the point, but I had other books that I needed to read, and this was just a little mini break, because the books that I wanted to start I was doing a vlog for when this readathon started, so I just wanted to read a book in between while I was waiting. So this might possibly get pushed into April's TBR, because what I did read of it was really good and I really want to see how it goes. So I might move this over to April, because I think this will be really good to fit into a particular readathon. So this you might see in April's TBR. I didn't get around to reading Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Booley, or Booley, or Booley, oh, I don't know. This is Sydney's Patreon book club. I have this on audiobook. I really wanted to read it, but the last like week and a half of March, basically, my reading went downhill because I kept getting distracted with numerous things, and so I wasn't reading much. And because my dad's away, I've been hanging around with my mum a bit more and being a bit more like present with Alice a bit more. So like the only time I've got to read is in the evening, and I've been reading downstairs and I've had distractions of the telly and all that, so it's been really difficult to read. So I haven't got around to doing it. I really want to, so I might read this later down the stage of this year, and then put my thoughts in a Discord chat when I get round to it. But I am not going to push this over to April, purely because Sydney's Patreon book club and Buddy Read book club, like, there's technically 3, but I think I was going to do 2. But I will be totally honest, those books I really want to read, so I just want to prioritise them now. But I think I will put this on another TBR later down the line. And also The Corpse Flower by Annette Hancock. I never got round to reading this. I do want to though, so I might push this into April's TBR if I have the time, because April I am participating in free readathons again. So we'll see if I got room. Like, this would fit very well for a particular readathon, because yeah, but we'll see. I do want to, but if I don't fit it in April, it will be probably May. I'll probably pick it up. And then we're actually on to the books, but before I go into that, I want to tell you whether I completed the readathons. So technically there were 5 readathons I was interested in. 2 I definitely wanted to do because I did the TBR, and the third one was, if I can get to it, I will. So I did do 3 readathons. So I completed Game of Thrones-a-thon, I completed Greek God-a-thon, and I did do Galaxy-a-thon and completed that. I never got round to the Hello Seasons because it was only a 48-hour readathon, and when that came, I was literally really behind on like my book club reads. And then the backlist readathon, again, it was just like I think a couple of days. I had book club readathons, book club picks that I needed to prioritise. It was specifically mine, and I hadn't read them, so I was like, no, I need to do them and all of that. So I did complete 3, and they were the 3 that I desperately wanted to do, so I'm really happy with that. So now onto the book. So I'm going with rating orders. So obviously we have a DNF. So the next book we're doing, like, rating wise, is the only 3-star, so that's the lowest minus the DNF, and that is The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. So I think I gave this technically a 3.5 or 3.75 star on Storygraph. The first half of this book I really loved. Like, it was already giving me a 4 or 5-star vibe, and I know if it continued it probably would have been a 5-star, but the first half I loved. And then we got into this particular character called Marcus, and why our main character Addie really struggled with this bloke. Basically we follow Addie and Dylan. So Addie and her sister are on their way to a wedding, and it's the first time she's going to meet her ex-boyfriend Dylan, who is going to the same wedding because it's like a mutual friend of theirs. So they're driving, and basically it turns out that Dylan was driving behind Addie. They clocked each other in like the wing mirror, and basically Dylan didn't notice that the car stopped and all that. So he went into Addie's car. He's written off their car, but Addie's car was fine. So they ended up having to go in a car altogether. So we get like dual timelines. So we get the present day in a card, and we get the past of how they met and like lead up to their breakup. We also have Addie and Dylan's perspective, which I really loved. So the first half of the book, it was really good. We got the like intense bit in the car. We also got like how she first met Dylan and how that all started, and then we literally got a third into the book and we met Marcus, and it was very clear that Marcus has a big play in this relationship and how it ended. So I sort of expected that, but when we get halfway through into the book, we finally get to the bit of what happened, and like apparently Addie cheated on Dylan, and like it was like Marcus was the one who put this in Dylan's head. La di la di la. To me, I just could not stand Marcus, and I felt like the book ended up being the Marcus show. It ended up really going up more on Marcus and what he said, and like the forgiveness that Dylan's finally doing, and that Marcus is slowly trying to change and all of this. And I was just like, I didn't read this book to hear about Marcus and how shit he is, and he's a narcissistic prick, basically. I didn't want to know that. Like, I could understand the part he played into this, but I didn't need to know anymore. And because of that, I got so infuriated. I wasn't enjoying the book because of his character, and it just felt like it was more about him rather than Addie and Dylan. And like, the ending was alright. They obviously finally got back together, and they were like sort of restarting the relationship rather than picking up where they left off. They wanted to restart it and go slow. It also had that insta love bit, which was done quite well, but I don't particularly like it personally. But in this, it was done well. But yeah, I gave it, I think it was a 3.75, 3.5 stars really. It wasn't one of her best books. I think if Marcus was just mentioned and we didn't have much of his backstory, I probably would have enjoyed it more. But because of him, I really didn't. So it's a shame, because I loved Fletcher. I loved the Switch. I thought they were amazing. So I had high hopes for this. But it was a complete flop for me. So I'm a little bit nervous now of her next book, which I think's the book something. I can't remember what it is, but a book loves. I can't remember what it is, but it's like I might be completely wrong, but she's got another book coming out this year, and I'm now a little bit worried about that, because I'm thinking I've had two fantastic books. One that's a complete flop for me. Is this going to be a really good book, or is this going to be another flop? So I'm a little bit nervous for that, but yeah. Now we're on to like the 4.5 or 4-star books. So the first two books are 4 stars. So first up is The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Shue. So this was ended up putting into the Greek Godathon TBR. I would tag all of the vlog videos that I did, but basically I ended up changing my mind a lot with the books. The road trip was also on Game of Thrones-a-thon and Greek Godathon as well, but this was for Greek Godathon. So basically I am slowly, as you will probably see in this video, I'm slowly going through the Shadowhunter series, and I'm reading it in a sense where I read the first Mortal Instrument series, then it was told to read this, and then you start reading the Infernal Devices, the 3 books there, and then you go back to the remaining 3 books of the Mortal Instruments. So I'm doing it in that kind of order. So I read this. This is obviously focusing on Magnus and Alec. So obviously in the first book of the Mortal Instruments series, Alec and Magnus do end up getting together. So this is them going on like their first like romantic holiday, but it ends up being more of a work holiday, because it turns out that Magnus started a cult, like a demon cult sort of thing, like worshipping demons. Like it was a joke he had between another warlock friend, and it turned out that someone actually made it into a proper cult, but Magnus is not running it. And so they're finding all of that out, and obviously it's very clear that Magnus has got a few there's a few things about Magnus that's hidden from Alec, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. It was just not the same as the books in the Shadowhunter series that I read so far. It's more of like a humorous sort of story, and you know, I absolutely love the queer rep. I also love the fact that a lot of people didn't like the fact that a Shadowhunter and a Downworlder were together. So I really liked that kind of rep, and you know, it was a laugh. It was just I didn't have the enjoyment as I did with the Mortal Instrument books I've read, but this was a 4-star. Then we were reading The Circus Infinite by Can Wong. This was for Angry Robots tour that we had. I went into this book thinking I have no idea how I'm going to feel about it. It's a sci-fi, but it's like space and a circus. So I was just like, I'm either going to really love it or I'm not going to enjoy it. And I'm very happy to say I really enjoyed it. It was a 4-star. I just absolutely loved. There were some bits that were slow and it was a bit draggy, and I was a bit like, it went over my head. I wasn't fully understanding it, but personally for me, I loved the circus. Like, it really was so descriptive, and I felt like I was there. I love the characters. I obviously love Jez, and like, you know, he is a asexual person, so I love that rep. I also love the sort of relationship he had with another character, but how well that character was. And this character wasn't asexual, but he basically wasn't bothered by sex. Like, he was very much like, you know, if I have sex with someone, it's because I want to, and all of that. So their relationship works quite well. But I like this in the sense that Jez is running away from himself. He's trying to not be a runaway. He's trying to find himself, and I basically liked how this ended. It ended in a way that he actually separated from his friends. He obviously separated from the love interest and went to go and fully decide who he truly is and what he wants to do with life now that he's no longer a scientific experiment. So I really liked how it ended. But yeah, it was and a surprising book that I thoroughly enjoyed. And if you love your sci-fi and you like the night circus and stuff like that, then definitely pick this up. Then we're on to The Atlas 6 by Livy Blake. So again, this wasn't actually on my TBR, but I swapped this book out for one of the prompts in Greek Godathon. So I read this. It's a stunning edition. Now, I will be honest. This has got 4.5 stars. If I understood it, it would have been 5 stars. But there were moments where I was like, I have no clue what's going on. There were moments where I was like, I felt like I was in a school lesson, specifically like a science lesson. And I was just like, I feel like I'm in school, but I don't really know what's going on. And there were moments like that, but I will be totally honest, the ending was just, it really brought the book for me. Like the characters, apart from a couple, most of the characters were morally grey characters. Like, you don't like them, but at the same time, you can't help rooting for them. And yeah, there was a massive big twist. I saw one of the twists coming, but I assumed they were a baddie. And then when it came clear to what this person was, I was like, oh, I don't think they are. I think they're pretending to be a baddie, but actually they're not. But yeah, I very did enjoy my ride with this. It didn't take me long to read this, so it did show that I did enjoy it. It was just, there were moments where I was like, I have no idea what I'm reading. I don't understand this. I feel like I'm back in school with a subject that I don't particularly like. So that was why it knocked off a book, but I cannot wait to pick up the second book. So I really want to know what happens, especially after that particular cliffhanger. Then we're on to like the 4.5 ones. So this Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Again, I don't think this was on, no, this wasn't on the TBR, but I swapped a book for, I think it was Greek Godathon, or it might have been, no, it wasn't Greek Godathon, it was Game of Thrones-a-thon. Read this. I love Alice in Wonderland. I gave it 4.5 stars purely because I am the wrong audience. Like, I am 31 years old. When I read a children's fiction book, I am going to enjoy it, but it's not giving me the satisfaction that I would have probably got when I was a child. But I love Alice in Wonderland. It's probably one of my favourite children's fiction books I like, and it just reminds me so much of my daughter, because she seriously goes into her Wonderland, like, she's just nuts. And I also like the fact that we have illustrations in this book, so, you know, it was a fun ride. Like, if I was, like, you know, 20 years younger, then I probably would have thoroughly enjoyed this. But I'm old now, and sometimes children's fiction just doesn't do it for me as much. I literally finished this morning Legendborn, which was my book club pick, and I've given this 4.5 stars. I love this book, but the reason why it hasn't got 5 stars is the first third of this book, I was so bored. I was just like, oh my god, please tell me this picks up, because this is just awful. And the funny thing is, I'm the only one who, no, me and Kaz were the only two who felt the first half was boring. Lucy loved it from the start. But I was just like, oh my god, please pick up. And I think I read about 10 more chapters and things started picking up, and I was like, ooh. What did it for me is we have a love triangle, and I know not everyone loves love triangles, but I do. I love a love triangle. I just do. And especially when a love triangle, you like both boys or girls, whichever way it is. Yeah, I absolutely love Brie. I love the rep with racism of being a black woman, like that. Like, there were moments where I had like a lump in my throat. I thought, oh god. And like, it also talked about slavery and stuff like that. Like, in regards to the representation about diversity, this was absolutely brilliant, and I learned quite a lot just from reading this. I do like the fact that this is like a King Arthur retelling, but there were moments where it bored me. I was just like, oh, okay, this is just a little bit boring. Like, I want the action. But from like halfway onwards, we got this love triangle, because like Brie and Nick it was, and that you were rooting for, and then we start seeing a bit more about this Cell character, who is the Merlin. So Nick is like a descendant of King Arthur, and when he ascends he will become like King Arthur sort of thing. And Cell is like is Merlin, he's protecting King Arthur, but we obviously find out that Cell is actually part human, part demon, which is what all Merlins were. But Brie's got these really strange powers, like completely different to any of these people in this, like, whatever it's called, Legendborn order. Yeah, for me, I love the fact that there's demons. For me, I love the magic, and I love the love triangle, and how it ended, I'm like, okay, because something happens to Nick, and so Nick sort of disappeared at the minute, but Brie and Cell have sort of, there's something going on there, and I'm like, oh, so like I've pre-ordered book 2 and I'm pretty much like, it's like, where is this? Basically I just want to know who Brie ends up with. Is she going to end up with Nick? Is she going to end up with Sel? Is she going to end up with someone else? Or is it going to be like one of those ones where she takes both of them? Because that would be cool. I don't think that's how it's going to end, but I'm here for the love triangle, if I'm going to be totally honest. I think this is what I'm just thoroughly loving more than anything, but I don't care. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this in the end. Like, it hasn't got a full 5-star. I honestly think going into book 2, I think book 2 might be a 5-star, because I think the world building per se will change and we're just going to get to the point. And lastly, in the 4.5 stars vibe is Law by Alexandra Bracken, which was my Very Loot vlog series. I loved this, I did, but there were moments where I was so bored. And it was the first half I was bored, the second half I loved. I like Law. I love Law, and I love her friend Kaz, and I love the whole sort of Greek mythology retelling that it was, like with the Agon, and the fact that these gods are being hunted. I like the sort of plot and the storyline and how it was done. There was just moments where it was boring and I was just like, this is dragging, like give me the action. I also felt the ending left me with more questions than answers, and it was one of those moments where I was like, could this book potentially be like a duology? Like, is there possibly another book in the pipeline that we just don't know about? But at the moment it is saying that this is just a standalone, and if that is the case, then that annoys me, because the ending was a sense of what's happened to the Agon, what happened to Kaz and Law, because they ended up being gods, and they were, because the Agon thing, they were going to be like immortal, but then all of a sudden neither of them were. They became human. So it was like, well, how did that work? So there were questions that didn't get answered in the end, and that bugs me. But in the whole, the writing was brilliant. I loved the retelling. There were so many twists in this book. Like, there was one twist I did not see coming. I was just like, oh, she didn't. So yeah, like the second half of this book really picked up and gave me a 4.5 vibes. Lucy herself gave it 4.5. I think she was in agreement with me that the first half was it was too descriptive, I think, and there was just it was a bit slow. There was no action, and then there were action, and then it ended and it was like, no, I want more. But the second half really picked up. And then we're on to the 5-star books. So I'm going to go through the ones that were on my Kindle. Again, these books that were mentioned were not on the TBR, so you know. So first, the first 2 books are by the same author, and it's the book 1 and book 2 of a trilogy, but I will give you my thoughts separately of each of the things. So first up is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. Guys, I knew a lot of people loved this book, and I put this book for Greek Godathon because I needed one for Poseidon. I did have a book, I really didn't want to read it, and loads of people put this particular book down for it, and I was like, oh, why? Like, is there, it's just to do with scene? Water elements. I was like, well, I'm trusting them, because there was about like 10 people who did it. I'm glad I ended up deciding to do this, because yes, it did have water elements, because literally it's talking about a bridge and this big sea, so it really was focusing on that. Oh my god, this book was amazing. So basically we follow Lara, who she has been trained with her 11 other sisters to basically become the Bridge Kingdom's bride. And she finds out a week before they have this meal to determine which sister it is who's going to be this bride. Lara finds out that actually her father was going to kill everyone else, so no one knew what was going on, because basically the bride is to infiltrate the Bridge Kingdom, find out all her secrets, and find how to take over the Bridge Kingdom, because Lara and her kingdom, I suppose, they're like poor, they're not getting food, blah blah blah. Long story cut short, Lara finds this out, and so she decides that she doesn't want to die, but she also does not want to watch her sisters die. So she decides to get a drug, and so she actually kills her sisters. They just literally, their pulse is so low that they look like they're dead, but they're not. Once the drug wears off, they're back alive. So she ends up doing that, and so she's the only remaining living sister, so obviously her father has to choose her to be the bride. She gets there, she meets her husband, which is Aaron. They obviously get married, and she's obviously living there, and so basically she has to infiltrate, get close to them and find out what's going on. They all believe that she's a spy from the get-go, and she is technically a spy, so they all think she's a spy. Lots of them didn't trust them, but Aaron started trusting her, and he finds out that yes, she's a spy. But she and so he's like, look, I know you're a spy, but before you do anything and before I have to, you know, sort you out, you need to know the truth. So she finds out that actually her kingdom and what her dad's doing is everything she's been told is a complete lie, that she's been lied to, that her father is a complete baddie and blah 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 and all of that. So she finds out the truth, so she decides to team up with Aaron to protect the Bridge Kingdom. But things mess up because Aaron sends out a letter to her father to say, I know she's a spy, but she now knows the truth. If, you know, I will give you this money, blah blah blah, as long as you don't go and attack or kill your daughter, blah blah blah. But in this piece of paper, Lara used special ink that was invisible to give all the secrets away. And she thought she got rid of it. She didn't, so it gets sent off. Basically, and an attack happened, and it's one of Lara's sisters, and she was going to kill, take Aaron. Lara kills her sister, and then it turns out that everyone believes that Lara did betray them and the spy, and she was like, no, I didn't. And Aaron's like fuming because he thinks that she was a spy all along. He gets kidnapped, and she gets shoved into a cell. And that's how Bridge Kingdom ended. And then obviously I was like, I'm going to have to read the second book. You can't leave me in a cliffhanger there. I want to know what happens, because Lara and Aaron, they're from enemies and they turn into lovers. And honestly, it's so sweet. And I was like, no, they just got to starting something. And like now, yeah. So I ended up then reading the second book, which is the Traitors Queen, which obviously you can see by the title, she is the Traitors Queen. And basically, Aaron has been kidnapped by her father. Her father knows that her sisters are. Well, her father knows that one of her sisters was alive, which is the one who Lara killed. Basically, he is trying to get his daughter Lara to come back. Yeah, there's a whole ploy of why Aaron got thinking, and like obviously they were trying to get more information out of him, but he won't, and they were using his like members of his kingdom and killing them off. They even at one point made someone look like Lara, and so like he ended up actually thinking she was dead, but it wasn't. Lara obviously turns around to the Bridge Kingdom and all the people there saying, look, I know you don't believe me, but this was a plan. Yes, I was here to spy. I found out the truth about my father, and so I was just like, I don't want anything to do with him, because, you know, I got rid of all of the letters I wrote. I didn't realise that one of them Aaron had hidden, blah blah blah. So Aaron's sister was like, look, I don't trust you, but you know this, your father, you know that kingdom, you're helping us. So, and she said, I will help you, but I need to go and find my sisters, because she obviously left them a note to say what happened. And she says like her sisters all combined, they're going to defeat their father. If it's just her, it's not. So she finds her sisters, and they all end up working and she told them like the full truth. So they were like, nope, father needs to basically get killed. Turns out that she's also got a half brother, and he isn't actually her half brother. He was actually her. It is her actual. They both share the same mother and father. Yeah. Basically, a massive big thing happens. Again, then it is back to being an enemies to lovers trope, because obviously she manages to get Aaron out. Aaron doesn't like her, but he's obviously conflicted because he obviously does have feelings for her. She's in love with him. At one point, they sort of tell each other they love each other, but she said, look, you know, no one's going to believe me and all that. Like, I have to leave. And like he sort of accepted that. So it was sort of they knew they loved each other, but they knew they couldn't be with each other. Now I was like, no, don't give me that. And then it ended happily in some sense. But it obviously opens up to the third book. And I thought I was going to read a third book. Turns out the third book's not out until May, so I'm going to have to wait until May for the third book. But the third book actually focuses on 2 different characters, which is in the second book. So it will be interesting how that works, because obviously I do love Lara and Aaron, and in the second book we do get a happy bit, but it's also sort of, you're left with questions of what other people believe, like will they be happy with her being their queen and all that. But the second book follows Lara's brother and a particular woman who's like sort of helped him in the second book. So I know it's an enemies to lovers trope again. So it'll be interesting to see how that is, and whether Lara and Aaron do still tie into the book, because I do enjoy that. And then lastly, another 5-star Kindle, which wasn't on my TBR, is Planet Barbarians, book 1. this is an alien romance. It's a dark alien romance. The first part of this book is a very vivid, well, not a vivid description, but it's known as a sexual assault and a rape. It's obviously kidnapping, there's torture and stuff like that. But it's done with sensitivity, and it literally, like, there is obviously a trigger warning, and like the next page goes into details. So she said if you don't want to be spoiled, but I went into it anyway. And it basically is that first little section is about that, but the remaining book, we don't have any of that. And then the remaining books in the series don't have anything dark topic like that. But basically we follow Georgie, who gets kidnapped by aliens and gets shoved into this ship. And there's these green aliens and these big badass aliens, and they're getting kidnapped, and they're obviously being used as cattle. And then literally their ship broke down, and they were getting attacked by another ship, so they ended up putting these cattle, which is the human, to this planet to stay there while they recuperated and sorted out their ship, and then they were coming back. So obviously they're skin and bones, they're all that. So Georgie managed to Georgie basically says, look, I'm going to go out and see if I can find anyone or find any food or anything like that. She does. She nearly gets attacked by this weird alien creature, and another alien basically saves her, and that is Vector. And basically he's like a different species type alien, and long story cut short, he falls in love with her, and he finds out she's his mate, and he doesn't realise that she's human. So literally their first meet, so he saves her, and he basically tends to her injuries, and he basically goes down on her. It's steamy as anything. So you could say that it was a assault because she was asleep and she didn't say yes to it. But when it was happening, she was like, I'm rolling with it. This is a nice thing to wake up for it. And, you know, he's giving me an orgasm. This book is steamy. And, like, there are so many problematic things in this book, but it's done in a way you're like, I'm kind of vibing with it. Like, I clearly like alien romance because this book was really, really good. It was steamy, and honestly I got hot under the collar of how vivid he is. Long story cut short, this book opens up with a series because basically the humans have to decide whether they want to stay in this earth or be used as be saved in this particular planet, or if they want to be made into cattle. So these humans all agree that yes, they will stay, but in doing so they have to sort of, I don't know whether they have to turn into sort of aliens, or whether they just have specific powers, but they all agree to it. But it is clear that some of these humans might be these aliens' mates, which I think opens up the series. So possibly each series has a different alien and human. But I love this book. I love Georgie. She was just so funny, and Vector just being an alien, and just their chemistry, considering they're a completely different species, was brilliant. Am I going to continue with the series? Hell yeah. Like, it is such an easy read. It's so steamy. You know, it's not the best writing, but I don't care because I'm fully enjoying it. So that was actually for the book, one of the books in Galaxy-a-thon. And since we're talking about Galaxy-a-thon, I might as well continue with those books if my books don't fall. So I also, for Galaxy-a-thon, I had the book For the Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, she is a favourite author. Like, honestly, I know every book that's by her I'll probably love. I love this book. We follow Evie and, what is his name? Yeah, Evie and Luke. So it is like an enemies to lovers sort of trope, but it turns out like it's... basically, like, there was an alien attack in their world, and then so they have like Luxon, which are aliens, and they're like living there, but they sort of have been told what to do and all of that. And Luke is an alien, but he's a different species of an alien. He's a very rare alien, and basically it turns out that Evie and Luke met like years ago, and it turns out that Evie was really poorly, and she got given a sort of alien type thing, and she then lost all of her memories of that particular moment, and so like she just remembers from like a specific moment onwards. It turns out that Evie and Luke actually were lovers. They were in a relationship and all of that, and so she obviously finds out the truth later in the book. It's really good. Like, it's really good. Like, Jennifer L. Armentrout really does write amazing. Her characters are brilliant. The romance is brilliant. I've literally got the remaining books on my wish list that I definitely want to buy and pick up because I want to know what happens. So this was just, I knew it was going to be 5 stars just because I love her books, and this wasn't a disappointment. Then we read Gemina by which is the Illuminae Files Book 2 by Amy Kaufman and Joe Christoph. I actually listened to this on audiobook, so I listened to this and read it because I got told on Sid's Discord chat by some people who love this series. They said listen to the audiobook as well because it's numerous narrators. You've got music, you've got like sounds of like gunshots and all of that. And honestly, reading and listening to this, I thought I was in a sci-fi movie. It was brilliant. Like, we follow 2 different characters. We follow Hannah and Nick, who was like a member of a notorious crime family, and Hannah is the Cactus Panther daughter, but they work together. They're enemies to lovers. This was brilliant. I'm not going to go into it because so much happens, but it's brilliant. And obviously we still have Katie and Ezra involved, but they're obviously in the other thing. But right at the end, they all meet. So obviously this opens up to Obsidian, which is the 3rd book where they are all together. So I love Hannah and Nick, like, just like, whereas Katie and Ezra, like, they are obviously very good. You know, they've been together for ages, they broke up for particular reasons, but like, you know, they still cared for each other and all that. This was a proper enemies to lovers. Like, Hannah was with someone else, but obviously she sort of did like Nick, but again, like, you know, she is the captain's daughter, it would have been forbidden and all that. But yeah, like, this was even more action-packed than the first one, and I'm just going to put it out there, as Ezra's mother is vile, and I hope in the 3rd book she gets her comeuppance, because my word. But yeah, this was 5 stars. Absolutely loved listening to the audiobook. I am reading the 3rd book in April and reading the audiobook, and I'm honestly already wanting to reread the whole series, and particularly reading Illuminae and listening to the audiobook, because I didn't do that, I just read it. But if you haven't read this series, bloody do it, because this has got me into sci-fi. This series has got me into sci-fi. I'm actually going to read Aurora Rising in April too, because it's someone's book club, and I'm like, do you know what? I love these 2 authors, so as much as it's not mixed media in Aurora Rising, I just think I'm just going to thoroughly enjoy it because I like the author's writing. So yeah, if you haven't read it, please read it because it was fantastic. I then finally finished reading Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, which is the 3rd book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Love this. Absolutely love this. Like, it was what I needed in the 2nd book. I didn't like Mal in the 2nd book. Mal reformed himself in this. I did sort of know how this book was going to end, just because I got that spoiler in Crooked Kingdom, because I read that before I finished reading this. But I loved it. It ended in a way, and yeah. But I'm also, I've seen a little hint that I was going to read King of Scars. I was going to read it, but I changed my mind just because I wanted to read both King of Scars and Rule of Wolves both together, and I didn't have time to do that. But I did stupidly, as I started reading the first chapter, I was stupidly looked at something, and I think possibly where I think the Darkling's dead, he may not be dead. So I may have spoiled that for me if that's true, but I love that series. I'm glad it ended, just because I'm so happy to start King of Scars, because I love Nikolai and I just need to know. I am currently, as I'm filming this, it's literally 31st of March, but I'm currently still reading The Midnight Library. I've read a third of it, but it's only short, but I already know I'm loving it. It's what I've read so far. I have literally annotated and highlighted the shit out of this already. I know I'm going to continue loving this. It's already given me 5-star vibes, so I'm putting it in here because I'll be finishing it today anyway. I know it's going to be 5 stars. It is emotional. There was one moment where I absolutely cried my eyes out, and I was like, pull yourself together, girl, pull yourself together. But yeah, the mental health rep in this is just brilliant, and yeah. And then I also read, hang on, which one? Yeah, I read City of Ashes, which is the 2nd book in Mortal Instruments, and then I read City of Glass, which is the 3rd book. Now, I said that I think I read the first 3 books in this series, and I haven't read the others. I have. I couldn't remember much in this one, but the ending I did remember, but I definitely remembered everything in this one, because as I was reading, I went, oh yeah, love this. I think Mortal Instruments is something I've watched the Shadowhunters series about 10 times after reading these. I ended up watching the 3rd season back to back because I was like, I really want to watch it again. I love the movie, so I know I'm going to love this series anyway, especially the Mortal Instruments series, because I watch it and know it. And I love the fact that I am now comparing the books to the series, because they're not completely, the books aren't completely the same, and I love that. And in some sense, the books are better than the series because there's more to it. But yeah, Sebastian in this, whoa, like I knew who Sebastian was, and obviously I knew it when I watched the TV series because I had read the first 3 books, but when you read the books, I'm like, oh my god, you know what? He's just misunderstood in some ways. And yeah, that's it. That's all the books I've read. I have another massive April TBR. I am hoping to do 3 readathons in April too, so that would be fun. And a little spoiler for what to expect in April: expect horror, thriller, and military fantasy. That's all you need to know. But thank you for watching. Let me know if you read any of these books and what your thoughts were. And yes, I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.